Thelema Coast to Coast, Show 29, July 8th, 2006. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Welcome to Thelema Coast to Coast. My name is John Crow, and I'm the host of the show. Before getting into the show, I want to remind listeners there are 4 ways to contact the podcast. First is via email, podcast@thelemicoasttocoast.com. The second is voicemail, 206-600-4216. The next is the website, www.thelemicoasttocoast.com. And then the fourth way is via mail, Thelema Coast to Coast, care of John Crow, P.O. Box 7045, Marietta, Georgia, Marietta, 30065, and that's in the United States. On today's show, we have Keith 418 and myself talking about modeling within the thelemic community, and then a very interesting conversation with Breck Outland regarding C.F. Russell and Breck's website exploring the C.F. Russell materials. However, before the interviews, I want to give a few reminders. First, that Thelema Coast to Coast has a MySpace page. It can be viewed at www.myspace.com/Thelema Coast to Coast. Right now, there are over 600 people who have friended it, and if you have a MySpace page, feel free to stop over and friend on it. That way you can get updates on what's going on with Thelema Coast to Coast. Also, I still have Thelema Coast to Coast bumper stickers, and all you have to do is send a postcard to the mail address, include your return address, and I will send you a couple of Thelema Coast to Coast bumper stickers. And the postcard will also be scanned and put on the Thelema Coast to Coast website. Lastly, the Thelema Coast to Coast Frapper map has over 260 people on it now, but I know there are a lot more listening, so please go to the Thelema Coast to Coast Frapper map. It can be found off the Thelema Coast to Coast website or on the MySpace page, and add yourself. It's great to see who's listening and where you're from. Now, without it appearing as a shameless self-promotion, I want to let everybody know in the Atlanta area that I will be giving a talk on the night of July 14th at 8 p.m. at Dove and Serpent Oasis in coordination with Hagia Sophia chapter of Rose Croix. I will be talking about Aleister Crowley and his ontology. The name of the talk is The Nature of Becoming, an examination of Aleister Crowley's ontology and map of consciousness. I'm hoping to be able to record this talk and put it out on the podcast later in the summer. We'll see how that goes. However, if you want to hear it now, there's also a reception, music, wonderful food, wine, and things like that. So I would encourage everybody in the Atlanta area who listens to the podcast to attend. It is again at Dove and Serpent Oasis on July 14th at 8 p.m. If you have questions, feel free to email the podcast, and I will forward them to the appropriate people. The cost of the event is $11. So, one other thing people should be aware of, I've been having some problems with my hosting. The Thelema Coast to Coast website has been on a server run over my DSL line. I have some servers in my home. However, this has been unreliable the last week or so, and that has resulted in the website and email being down occasionally. I have since moved the website to a third-party hosted server, so hopefully the website will be more reliable as well as faster. I've tested it, and things seem to be functioning fine. However, if you have any problems, please email me. Okay, so now we're going to get into listener feedback. The first one is a audio feedback message from Stephen Ash in the UK. I recently interviewed Stephen about his book, The Kabbalah of the 50 Gates, and his take on Kabbalah and the organization he's in. That will be on a future show. But here is Steve's feedback regarding show 28.
93, John. Stephen Ash here, calling from Glastonbury in England. I'm now a regular listener, and I'm looking forward to the broadcasting of our interview that we recorded last week, giving me the opportunity of reaching deeply within to myself and attempting to express my convictions related to the esoteric path. Also, thank you for working your online initiative. Thelema Coast to Coast is excellent. It enables such a forum for the open sharing of ideas and opinions. I'd like to take a few moments to share some thoughts I've had concerning Keith 418's take on the initiate's conversion crisis, which you discussed in issue 28, which concerns the moment of cusp between everyday consciousness and the privileged perspective brought on by that flash of enlightenment, that aha moment of realization of the first glimpse of the true will involved in the state of becoming initiate. I'm of the opinion that what we're talking about here is the impact upon the everyday functioning of any individual who's realized that the world can be seen in a different way after a moment of insightful revelation that transforms his or her point of view forever. The main comment I'd like to make about this is that both yourself and Keith 418 express something of a philosophical dilemma when addressing the issue of acting in accordance with one's true will in both the public and the private arenas. You both intimate that the task is something of a struggle, which indeed it always is, life being an art that arises from the very nature of struggle on both the tertiary and existential levels. But I'm sure that a way of looking at this situation can be resolved if we remember to temper our perspective on the challenges of remaining true to one's core of will with the kind of insightful perspective recently arrived at in the area of the physical sciences. In the same way as physicists adopt such apparently contradictory models of fundamental theory as the classical Newtonian model and the diversely complex theories of quantum electrodynamics to base their math upon, I feel that we have to bring the same perspective to bear on the praxis of Thelema. Look at the way in which the properties of light have been treated in each of these schools. Classical physics deals with wave and particle behavior in what we esotericists term the microcosm, that is, everything that occurs on this side of the light-speed barrier. Now, the classic model of relativity doesn't say that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. It merely states that nothing can cross the light-speed time barrier. Everything has a linear development here in our everyday reality, but on the subatomic level, the energy exchanges of photons, which are emitted from electrons, behave as if they have properties that travel backwards in time to interact with that aspect of the photon operating in our continuum, the microcosm. There's an experiment known as the double slit experiment, and there's a nice video clip of this 5-minute download on whatthebeep.com websites listed on Google. The quantum physicists adopt a much broader model and incorporate the possibility that interaction is possible on either side of the light-speed barrier, and this is why certain particles seem to be there one moment, gone again, before popping back into existence. What I'm edging towards saying here is that we shouldn't be afraid of recognizing that the issues of self-honesty or gaining the perspective of self-directed will in the widely diverse world of our outer reality and the universe composed of the combination of every other individual's shared outer reality maps can be addressed on at least two different levels. We can legitimately adopt an approach based on apparently irreconcilable strategies of theoretical modeling, as long as we recognize that all the rules are relativistic, that is, relative to our individual capacity or the quality of our capacity of understanding. Understanding comes first, remember, wisdom follows. The approach we might take to the greater universe around us can be based on a different modelling system to the universe of our inner reality. The math will be the same. I love listening to the quality of ideas showcased on your show, and even though I'm only a single brother of the Argentium Astrum, I do cherish the community you're so successfully building there. In this community, disagreement, agreement, debate can all play a part in improving the quality of our experience of an unfolding thelemic tradition. On behalf of everyone here in the fraternity of the Sanctum Regnum, from myself and to all my brothers and sisters in the Argentium Astrum, my best wishes and Do What Thou Wilt Should Be the Whole of the Law, 93, everyone.
Thanks for sending that in, Steve. It's always interesting to get different perspectives on various aspects of the thelemic process, and I appreciate you taking the time to send that in. The next email is from a listener named Shade. 93, John, in reference to your 8th, 9th, 10th podcast presenting the audio version of Liber All, I was wondering if there is available a full audio version of all 3 chapters of Liber All via MP3. I really enjoyed the 3rd chapter with the music playing in the background. Did that group do the entire Book of the Law or just chapter 3? If they did, I would definitely love to have a copy of it. Let me know. Thanks. Shade. Loves the law, love under will. Okay. The first chapter was from a set of 3 recordings that were done in the early 90s. As I mentioned before, Steve Ash was part of that, and that's how I got in touch with him at first. He has since done a recording of Liber All, and I gave some samples of that. That is really the best recording that I know of all 3 chapters. The one that was done in the 90s is really poor quality. I wanted to still kind of use that sound in the first chapter, but I understand that the quality wasn't the best. So if you're looking to get all 3 chapters, Steve's is the best to get. The second chapter was done by John Sewell and a group of Thelemites in Seattle, and he did just the second chapter. And then the reading of the 3rd chapter was done by a group of musicians, and they have only done chapter 3 at this point. So if you're looking for all 3 chapters spoken, Steve Ash's is the way to go. If you're looking for all of them put to music, unfortunately, I don't know of anybody who has all 3 chapters to music. I hope that answers your question. The next email is from a listener named Tony. He writes, Hi John, greetings and health. Do What Thou Wilt Shall Be the Whole of the Law. I came across your podcast via an email sent to a Yahoo Groups list that I belong to. To be perfectly honest with you, I was intrigued by the title Thelema Coast to Coast and wondered what sort of podcast would be published under a name which, well, forgive me for saying this, but sounded kind of commercial. I have to say that the first podcast I listened to, number 25, blew me away. So much so that I have downloaded them all and have started to listen through them from the beginning. So congratulations on what is a thoroughly professional and diverse offering. The interview with Tony Stansfeld Jones was absolutely fascinating and a breath of fresh air from the normal interviews which dwell on a person's magical life. I so agree that it is important to learn as much as we can about the leading lights in occult and magic, both their magical and personal sides. Maybe some would consider this prying, but I consider it more like something akin to balance, if that makes any kind of sense. I belonged to a ceremonial magic order several years which, unfortunately, went the way of many small orders and broke up. Now, I find it interesting to hear your and Keith 418's discussion on self-discipline, as I realize this was the reason the order broke up. But the point I really want to make here is that my magical life has drifted very much into the theoretical and the practical and has fell into dispute. However, your podcasts have reawakened my interest, and I have restarted the practical and also decided to join the OTO, something I've been considering very seriously for some time. For information, I include links to Thelema Coast to Coast on my website. I will also be including links to Thelema Coast to Coast in the next issue of an email newsletter I send out to around 800 people. Keep up the good work. In regards to Keith 418. Loves the law, love under will. Tony in Essex, England. Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. For those who haven't heard the interview with Tony Stansfeld Jones, it was one of the first ones. I think it's number 4 or number 5. And it is an interview with the son of Frater Akkad. And the important aspect of it is Crowley's diaries really talk about all the facets of his life, from the personal to the family to his magical and so forth. But Frater Akkad's diaries were pretty much mostly his magical workings, and so you didn't get a lot of his life. The interview with Tony allows us to kind of know a little more about what the home life of Frater Akkad was like. And so the questions might seem mundane, but they actually kind of open up a lot of information about how Frater Akkad lived his life, and how someone who is so important within the thelemic history and community, it's interesting to see how he lived his life on a day-to-day basis and still be able to come up with the accomplishments that he did. So that's why that interview with Tony Stansfeld Jones is pretty interesting. And Tony, I'm glad that you're interested in going to be joining the OTO. for all the criticism that I and others on the show give of the OTO, I'm happy to be a member, and I support the OTO in the work that it does.